I remember the moment clearly. We were in a small room, 3 of us. One of them made a joke. "Look who's talking about money now." And they all laughed. I laughed too. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't want them to see how much it stung Dot, because deep down, I was broke. Not just financially, but mentally, emotionally. And maybe that was the worst part of all. I wasn't always like that. Dot, there was a time I believed I could do anything. When I was younger, I had big ideas, big plans. But somewhere along the line, life wore me down. Debt piled up. Dreams shrank. And I started telling myself things like, maybe success isn't for me. Maybe I'm just not the type. Maybe it's too late. But that day, when they laughed, something snapped inside me. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I was done being broke. I was done pretending. I was done accepting a life that never felt like mine. I went home that night and opened a notebook. No fancy plan. No big strategy. Just a blank page and a pen dot at the top. I wrote, "I am not staying here." Below that, I made a list. Every debt, every recurring expense, every stupid thing I'd bought on impulse. Then I wrote another list. Every skill I had, every connection, every hour of the day I wasted on nonsense. It was ugly, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt powerful. That was day one. I didn't become rich the next day. I didn't even make more money. But I had something better. Direction. I turned off Netflix. Deleted the apps that drained my time. And every morning before work, I got up an hour early to read. Not books on hustle. Books on discipline, wealth, mindset. I started with Atomic Habits. Then The Psychology of Money. Then Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Each book didn't just teach me something new. They reminded me of what I already knew, but had buried under fear. Within a month, things started to shift. I made a rule. No spending unless it makes me stronger, smarter, or freer. I canceled subscriptions, sold old clothes, started cooking instead of ordering out. It felt small, insignificant even, but every time I said no to something that kept me stuck, I said yes to the person I was becoming. And that version of me? He was dangerous because he was finally awake that I started a side hustle. Copywriting. Didn't know much at first, but I learned. Took free online courses. Watched tutorials late at night while everyone else slept. My first gig paid $37. I remember smiling like I'd won the lottery. Not because of the amount, but because it was mine. My brain. My effort. My decision. It felt like freedom. They still laughed, by the way, when I started saying no to nights out. When I passed on expensive trips. When I chose work over play. They said I was too serious, too focused, too obsessed. But obsession was exactly what I needed. Because the old me was addicted to excuses. And I was ready to trade them for results. Didn't know it then, but that small decision that night when they laughed would change my entire life. Not instantly, but permanently, because I was no longer waiting for permission. I was building a new story, word by word, brick by brick, and this time I would be the one they talk about, not with laughter, but with respect. Asterisk, they say motivation gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going. I learned that the hard way. After the night they laughed at me, I started changing small things. The books I read, the way I spoke to myself, the habits I kept in the dark. But the truth? It wasn't enough. To want a better life, I had to earn it. Every day. The first thing I did was face my finances. And that was brutal. I opened all my accounts, checked every credit card, loan, recurring charge, overdue bill. I felt sick. I was nearly $12,000 in debt. I had nothing saved, and I was still spending more than I earned out. How did I let it get this far? Because like most people, I didn't want to look at it. Looking meant owning it, and owning it meant I had no one left to blame. But I forced myself to sit in it, to feel the shame, to feel the reality. Then I opened a new page in that same notebook and wrote 3 words: fix this now. I made a strict plan. Cut my expenses by 50%. Take a second part-time job on weekends. Put every extra dollar toward my smallest debt. I called it the avalanche protocol. Start with one small win, then let it roll. My goal? Not to feel rich, but to feel in control. The first month was tough. I worked 6 days a week. I stopped going out completely. Friends stopped calling. Weekends became spreadsheets and grocery lists. But I was okay with that, because every week my debt went down. $200, then $350, then $500. I could feel the chains loosening. Not just financially, emotionally. I was starting to breathe again. Discipline didn't come easy. I slipped. There were nights I ordered takeout, days I didn't get up early, times I almost convinced myself I deserved a break. But then I'd look at that notebook, that page, those 3 words, fix this now, and I'd get back on track. I built a simple system. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., read 20 pages of a financial book, journal for 10 minutes, review budget before I leave the house. No spending. Except for food, rent, debt. Boring? Maybe. But boredom is a powerful weapon when you're trying to change your life, because excitement fades. But systems last. Then came the turning point. It was a rainy Tuesday. My bank account hit 0 again. But for the first time, I didn't panic. Why? Because I had already paid all my bills. I had food in the fridge. I had no unnecessary subscriptions. And my smallest credit card? Paid off. 0 didn't scare me anymore, because 0 was clean. That night, I did something symbolic. I cut that credit card in half, held the 2 pieces in my hand like a trophy, and I smiled, not because it was over, but because I had started winning. That's when I realized being rich isn't about having more. It's about owing less. Freedom isn't fancy. It's quiet. It's the sound of nothing chasing you. As I got more disciplined, strange things started happening. People who once laughed now asked for advice. I got a small raise at work because my focus improved. My weekend gigs started referring me to more clients. Money didn't flood in, but it trickled, and I respected every dollar like it was a soldier. Not to be wasted, to be deployed. I created new rules for myself. Every dollar has a job. Never make emotional purchases. Don't upgrade anything that still works. Never go broke trying to look rich. Pay yourself first, even if it's $5. These rules saved me. Because when your willpower fades, your rules stay. And every time I wanted to quit, I reminded myself, you already know what giving up feels like. Try something different. 6 months in, I was no longer broke, still not wealthy, but stable, clear-minded, and dangerous. Because now I had proof. Proof that I wasn't lazy. Proof that I could change. Proof that this wasn't luck. This was work. One night I passed by that same friend who laughed at me months ago. He was out, drinking, laughing loud, just like before. He didn't notice me. But I noticed something in myself. I didn't feel bitter, or smug, or superior. I just felt done proving anything to anyone. Done chasing validation. Done playing the same game as everyone else. Because I had built my own game now. And the rules? I made them. Asterisk, it's one thing to escape the fire. It's another to make sure you never go back in. That's what I focused on next. After I paid off my smallest debt and built my first $1,000 in savings, I realized something scary. I was still vulnerable. One emergency, one hospital bill, one bad week, and I'd be right back where I started. That's when I remembered something. Warren Buffett once said, "The key to investing is not assessing how much an industry is going to affect society or how much it will grow, but rather determining the competitive advantage of any given company. And above all, the durability of that advantage. In other words, build a moat, a system that protects you, even when things go wrong, especially when you feel good. So I started designing my own financial moat, not just to grow wealth, but to protect it. I broke it down into 4 parts. 1. Emergency fund equals the outer wall saved 3 months of living expenses. Then 6. Then 9. Not in stocks, not in crypto, just cash. Boring, quiet, untouchable. Because peace of mind isn't about returns. It's about resilience. 2. Automated investments equals the watchtower's eye set up recurring transfers to my index fund. Every week, didn't matter if the market was up or down. $50, $100, whatever I could afford. It was small, but it was relentless. Over time, I stopped checking the balance. Because it wasn't about the number. It was about the discipline. I was training myself to think long-term. 3. Skill development equals the archer's eye invested in myself, not with courses I'd never finish, but with real-world action. I improved my writing, learned sales, watched YouTube, tutorials on client retention, studied freelancers who charged double what I did. I started raising my prices slowly but consistently. Every new client was a lesson. Every revision was practice. Every no was a redirect. 4. Boundaries equals the gatekeepers. I started saying no more than yes. No to social events I couldn't afford. No to people who drained my focus. No to jobs that paid low but demanded too much. I wasn't arrogant. I was selective because my time wasn't cheap anymore. My energy wasn't free, and the more I protected it, the more valuable it became. This was when things really shifted. I wasn't just surviving now. I was building. Slow, steady, quiet. I tracked my net worth every 30 days. Not obsessively. Just enough to remind myself, you're not stuck anymore. Then came a phone call I'll never forget. A former boss reached out. He offered me a position with a higher salary than I'd ever earned. It was tempting. Stability. Prestige. A big title. But I said no. Not because I didn't need the money, but because I didn't need the permission anymore. I had built something they couldn't offer me. Freedom. When I told friends, they were shocked. Are you crazy? You're turning down that much? What if your little business doesn't work? I smiled, because my moat was strong. I had no debt. A 6-month runway. Growing investments. Repeat clients. And most importantly, unshakable discipline. That's when I realized something else. Most people don't fail because they don't make money. They fail because they don't keep it. They build sandcastles. I was building stone walls. And those walls weren't built with luck. They were built with routine. Every morning I still woke up early. I still read, still journaled, still tracked my habits. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I had fallen in love with the person I was becoming, and I wasn't going to abandon him. A moat isn't about being invincible. It's about making survival the default. So when life hits you, because it will, you don't crumble. You adjust. You pivot. You wait. But you don't go back, because you've already come too far to start over. I still had a long way to go. But I wasn't scared anymore, because the next time life laughed at me, I'd be the one standing behind the wall. I built not with pride, but with quiet power. Asterisk, there's a pattern. Once you start escaping the noise, you begin to see it. Most people don't stay poor because they're lazy. They stay poor because they've been trained to be comfortable there. And I say that with no judgment, because I was one of them. You're taught to obey. Go to school. Get good grades. Get a job. Pay your bills. Retire. You're not taught to question. You're not taught to build. You're certainly not taught to own. Instead, you're trained to consume, to spend, to owe, to wait, and worst of all, to believe that people who escaped the system got lucky. But I know better now. I used to envy the wealthy, think they were born into it, that it wasn't for people like me. But once I got close to it, once I built even a small slice of freedom, I realized the truth. Most rich people weren't smarter. They were just more intentional. They weren't playing the same game. They were playing a different one they designed themselves. So I started studying that game, how they think, how they spend, how they protect. I noticed patterns. They buy assets, not status. They care more about time than appearances. They value control over everything. And most importantly, they never stop learning. The people I met who built real wealth, they read more, they listened more, they questioned more, not because they had to, but because it became who they were. Meanwhile, I looked around at the people I used to hang out with. Same routines, same problems, same complaints, still broke, still waiting, still blaming. And I realized something painful. They didn't want to win. They just wanted to feel safe. They didn't want freedom. They wanted comfort. And freedom, true freedom, is never comfortable at first. It requires sacrifice. It demands honesty. It forces you to walk away from things that feel good, but keep you stuck. Most people won't do that. They'll rationalize. They'll deflect. They'll laugh at you before they ever admit they're scared. But fear disguised as comfort? That's the enemy. I started keeping a list. Things I notice rich people don't do. They don't chase trends. Don't blame the economy. They don't wait for permission. They don't outsource responsibility. They own everything they do. Every decision. Every outcome. Even the failures. That's how they stay free. It's not about money. It's about mindset. Because the moment you stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like an owner, everything changes. You still get hit. Life still punches you in the mouth. But you punch back with clarity, with structure, with belief, and most people never get there because they're too busy chasing distractions. One day, someone messaged me, "Hey, man, you seem like you've got it figured out. Can you help me?" I said, "Sure." Sent him the exact books I read, told him the exact routines I used, offered to check in weekly. He never followed up. A month later, he was still posting memes about how hard life was, still complaining about rent, still blaming his boss. I didn't judge him. I just understood, because that used to be me. The old me would have joined him. The new me was building a different life, quietly, consistently, deliberately. That's the difference. That's why most people stay poor, not because they don't have opportunity, but because they trade it for comfort. And once I saw that pattern, I vowed to never go back. Warren Buffett once said he tap dances to work. When I first heard that, I thought it was a joke. Who could possibly feel that way about their job? But now I get it. Because I feel it too. Not because I made millions. Not because I drive a fancy car or wear a designer watch. But because I do work I chose, on my terms, in my way, and that changes everything. These days, my mornings are quiet. I brew my own coffee, check my goals, read something that makes me sharper. Then I get to work. For myself, from a laptop. With no one barking orders, no meetings I hate, no pretending dot, just value and service. And alignment dot, it's not always easy, but it's always mine. Money flows differently now. More comes in. Less goes out dot, and when I spend from a place of clarity, not emotion. I've built buffers. I've built systems. I've built a life that doesn't fall apart when something goes wrong. That's real wealth. Not what's in your bank account, but what you'd have left if it got wiped out. I'd still have my mind, my skills, my network, my belief. That's what no one can take. Sometimes I think back to the night they laughed at me, and I smile. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I proved myself right. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't delusional. I wasn't too late. I just needed to start and keep going, quietly, faithfully, relentlessly. Today, people ask me for advice. They think I have the secrets. I tell them the truth. You already know what to do. The question is whether you'll do it when it's not convenient, whether you'll keep going when no one claps, whether you'll sacrifice being liked to become respected, and whether you'll learn to love the silence. Because the silence is where the transformation happens. This is not a story about how I got rich. This is a story about how I stopped being owned by fear, by doubt, by excuses and how I started living on my own terms. Now, I don't dread Mondays. I don't fear debt. I don't fake smiles in meetings. I tap dance to work. And that, to me, is freedom.